We were averaging at that point around like $20,000 a month
Mm.
in e-commerce sales. And that's USD because we do, even though we're in Canada, we operate in US, but wasn't enough to cover the bills. And
Mm.
that was a problem. So the biggest month that we've had so far has been $100,000. So that was a big month for us, which was really exciting. I'd been kind of creeping up towards that, and we'd had some, 50, 60, $75,000 months, but maybe we'd had a sale, or maybe there was like, something else that was kind of going on to kind of bump that a little bit. And obviously ads were really helping with that and kind of keeping that running. But July was our first $100,000 month that we've had without having to run any kind of campaign, without having to run any kind of like, site-wide sale. That's what I mean when I say campaign. Like it's the first month that we've had 100,000 just because. But I did have to have a chat with my production manager. I was just like, so Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
I think we like if we have July, but at like it's I'm assuming it's going to be like double that by the time
Mm.
Christmas rolls around. Can you do that? Can you guys, is that okay? Like, do you need
Can we
me
fulfill
to,
that?
yeah, can we actually get all these orders out of the door? So that was actually my first thing was I think it would be great to have like a $200,000 month kind of around, November and the Christmas season. So to double that, I think would be, and I don't think that's unreasonable at all, especially just
Mm.
knowing how well Christmas does for us. Before I found the program, it was very much, we were really reliant on socials, which was great and kind of had its heyday. Like we are a pretty established business. It's been around since 2018 was when we incorporated, and then, was technically running it before that. So it's, not brand new. We weren't just kind of getting off the ground. We'd been around for a few years. And we had had a really great year during COVID, which is kind of ironic. I feel like a lot of people had the opposite, but we were kind of set up and ready to rock with e-commerce, and our product did really well. We make eco-friendly beeswax wraps, and we were able to really take advantage of that. And then the iOS 14 update happened, and I feel like me and a lot of fellow kind of product-based businesses we're really struggling to work with external agencies because I've always worked with external agencies. I'd never run my own Facebook ads. I'd always kind of dabbled in the email side of things, but was really uncomfortable doing anything with like paid ads myself. And we just couldn't get them to work profitably again. Like it just was, there was something that happened in that update. And I think a lot of marketers hadn't really updated how they were going about running ads on Facebook and, later Meta. And so we kind of shifted completely to organic socials for a couple of years. And that was working really great for a little while. I think like 80% of our sales were coming through our social channels. But the longer we were on to various channels, it felt like the more volatile it was becoming.
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
and so the real struggle of where we were at when I kind of made the decision to join was, we're either like I was kind of at my wits' ends where I was like, I don't really know what to do anymore. Either like
Mm.
we obviously socials aren't working. It felt like paid advertising also wasn't working. Like, I felt like, what are our options? I didn't feel like we had any options left, to be honest. And this was sort of in some ways, maybe a little bit of a last kick at the can of like, if we can't make this work, like, I don't know if we'll have to close. I don't know. Like, I don't know what we would have ended up doing. Like, maybe we would have pulled through, but who knows? That was kind of the mindset that I was in at that point in time was like, well, this is like, then I'll know I've done everything and I've tried everything humanly possible to keep the business afloat. And if this still doesn't work, well, then like, I don't know, we're going to have to really sit down and have some serious talks about what it is that we're doing anymore. We've had other agencies that were much bigger or just different kind of dynamics where it was really awful in terms of a relationship. Like it felt like they
Mm.
were using kind of talking in circles or you'll hear people talk about, politicians and how they don't answer questions. And it always kind of, you feel like you are more confused after the question than before the question. And it felt like a lot of that.
Mm.
So we didn't work with those people for very long because I felt like it was just a little bit of a nightmare in terms of getting any kind of clarity or any real answer. Like when something wasn't working, there was never a
Mm.
like, they clearly didn't know why something wasn't working. Like you kind of just
Mm.
kept getting talked in circles. We did have really great relationships with some of the people we were working with in 2020, and they were really open about the fact that they were just going in a different direction after the iOS update. It really, took them for a spin, and they were basically going to focus only on email as a result. So it really upended and up was a big upheaval for them as well. But they were lovely and they were great and they were really wonderful to work with. So I've kind of had both experiences. And we also had somebody after that who was local here. And again, great people. They were much more transparent. They were a small boutique. It was only like a couple people. It felt a little bit more like a friendship than like working with an agency. But they just really couldn't get things running either. And a big part of that was like there wasn't really a lot of, in hindsight now after having like done the course, is there wasn't really a lot of kind of creative, right? Like it was still very much like the back end management of things that the agency was doing, and not really any energy going into the actual creative side of things, or that still being on me. And I had no idea if I would do something. I was just like, well, it just needs to be a static. Like, I don't know. I still had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't have time at the time, or I didn't think that I
Yeah.
did, but also just didn't really have the knowledge. So I would say like we really enjoyed working with them, but at the same time, I understand now why it didn't work, even though they were really lovely people. From 2020 onwards, the landscape just seems to shift so much faster as well. I would say in terms of just like the general state of the world and economy, but also, just technology speeds things up as well. So kind of keeping up with things felt like it was we were on a bit of a hamster wheel where we were just like we'd find something that would work, and then it would just fall off, and you'd have to find something new, and was getting kind of tired of feeling like, we're constantly reinventing the business, like just wanting to find some kind of stability rather than it being this kind of volatile up and down and up and down, and you finally get a break, and then something else happens. And I think that is a little bit of entrepreneurship in a nutshell sometimes, but I think there is, maybe not to quite to such extremes.
Mm.
um, and I think, yeah, in hindsight, like things that we could have probably been doing differently, or what I could have been doing differently, was definitely, I think, as the founder, having a better understanding of, if we're going to be spending that much money on something like ads, like in 2020, we spent a crazy amount of money, like actually understanding what it was that was working and why. But at the time, I'll be honest, I just didn't really want to know. It was working, so I didn't need to know.
Yeah.
It felt like printing money. You could just like go and you could put an ad up for, $10 and make, 15 or $20. And it was like,
Mhm.
okay, well, you just do that and it works. And at that time, it was like anything we were putting out was working. Like it could be the worst ad you'd ever seen. So it didn't feel at the time like there was a lot to understand. And then that's obviously shifted quite significantly in the last, 4 or 5 years. Um,
Mm.
so I think maybe almost being like, I feel like I was really intimidated and almost like scared of Facebook ads in the beginning
Mhm.
too. Like it was very much something that I was like, I actually just don't want to do this, because I opened the back end and I'm like, you might as well be speaking a foreign language to me. Like I don't really
Mm.
understand what's going on. Um, so that's been something that's been really great with the course too, is kind of, now I feel much more confident, and actually find it interesting. So I own a company called Goldilocks Kids. We're based here in Victoria, BC in Canada. And our main flagship product is our reusable beeswax food wraps. That was the first thing that I started making more as a hobby before it turned into a full-blown business. We have other eco-friendly goods as well, but our beeswax wraps are definitely what we're like mostly known for. And I started making wraps actually as a Christmas gift for my mom. That was what I was interested in. I had actually been volunteering with a shark conservation project in Fiji.
Mm.
And that was where I was introduced to the kind of massive issue of plastic pollution in the ocean. I had no intention of starting a business when I was, volunteering at that course. I just knew I'm going to make some changes for my own life. That's the only thing that
Mm.
I can control personally, because it can be a really overwhelming and kind of daunting problem to try and tackle. And I'm just going to do what I need to do and make those choices. And then I went home for the holidays and I thought, you know what? One of my favorite things as I'm going down this kind of eco-friendly journey is what I used to call like use this, not that. I think it's one of the easiest things you can do is to just make swaps and just use different products, right? Like buy a safety razor rather than using a plastic one, use something like beeswax wraps rather than using, plastic wrap, which you literally use once and goes into the bin. It just felt like such a simple thing. But I also really wanted it to be kind of beautiful and pretty. And my background is actually, I have a master's degree in art history. So I have no
Wow.
background in marketing. I have no background in business. This was not something that I ever really thought I was going to be doing, but I like really beautiful things. So I really love good design. And I did, at one point work at a graphic design studio, but I really wanted to make a product that was like eco-friendly, that also like looked good and actually worked. Because at the time, there also wasn't really a lot on the market that I would say was kind of fun in the eco-friendly space. It was definitely a lot of
Mm.
like brown and beige, and was like kind of boring, for lack of a better word, at least, in
Mm.
2017. And so I wanted something that people felt good about using. They didn't feel guilty about when they were using it, or
Mm.
like were kind of reminded of this really awful, massive problem. It's like kind of, let's take eco-friendly, but make it fun and enjoyable so that you actually want to use it in your day-to-day life. I think one of the big selling features for me, and I don't know if this was on the call or if this is just kind of information and hindsight of that, like really solidified why I think it's a good course kind of in general, was that it wasn't a like one size fits all pitch. Like, you see, or even like the ads that you guys are running, but also obviously that runs through like the continuation of the whole course, right? Like it's all in alignment, is that it's not, I see a lot of ads for courses geared towards entrepreneurs, geared towards marketers that are like, if you do these 5 things and we're going to double your sales in the next 10 days and we guarantee, yada, 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 like all of these
Yeah.
different kinds of things. And I'm just like, that's just not how running a business works. Like there's no way you can guarantee that. There is no one size fits all. And anything that promises that it's going to be easy to me is an immediate red flag.
Mm.
So I think that that was also something that like between, the ads, that call, and then like subsequently, obviously doing the course too, that kind of continuation of just being like, this is something that is going to be work, but it's
Yeah.
going to be worth it, was kind of, and I
Hmm.
was like, that is such a green flag to me, that you're going to have to put in the work, you're going to have to spend the time. This isn't something that you just, watch in 15 minutes and all of a sudden your life has changed. Like there is no magic pill and there's no one size fits all. Like I can't give you an individual answer of how to fix your business, but I'm going to give you the tools on how to fix it yourself. That kind
Mm.
of like, what's the saying, like teach a man how to fish versus like,
Yeah.
give a man a
Give
fish,
him
whatever
fish.
that that
I
proverb
know what you
is,
mean.
kind of
Yeah.
kind of feels like it felt more like that. And that was
Mm.
something after that call, because that was really important to me, was that it wasn't a, there weren't all those usual red flags that I feel like I've
Mm.
seen. Because, sometimes I have gotten ads for other courses in the past and clicked through, and the alarm bells immediately on the website are like ding, ding, ding. Like, nope, this feels
Yeah.
scammy, or it just feels like it's making false promises, where this was one of the first kind of transitions of that whole kind of lead process that I've gone through, where I was just like, no, this feels very transparent and it's going to be work and it should be work. Like that's just how
Mm.
life is. I mean, I recommend this course to like many fellow friends and entrepreneurs that
Mm.
I come across or have coffee dates with. Like I rave about it all the time because I think it's fantastic. I would say to anybody listening that it's definitely worth it, but with the caveat that you just have to be willing to do the work. Like I think that anyone can follow the system and anyone can follow the program. I think the biggest barrier would just be yourself. Like that's the only thing that I think would be stopping someone from kind of like making it over to the other side of having $100,000 month. And I appreciate that there's the mindset portion of the course at the beginning as well. I think that that's a really good thing to include, because I do genuinely believe that like if I could do it, then anybody can. There's nothing that I'm doing that sets me apart from anybody else that I've met on the calls or anything like that. It's just kind of a stubbornness and not being willing to give up. I think a big takeaway for me that I also often share with them, that I think is huge, that you also kind of share throughout the course as well, is that it can be really hard to work with an ad agency if you also don't understand what works for your business. So I appreciate that it's designed in a way for specifically for the founder of the business. Um, and I think I'm in prior to taking the course, maybe would have argued differently or seen that differently or had a different viewpoint and been like, well, I just don't have time for that. And that's not my role within the company. Why would I want to learn that? But like I said, now that I've done it, I completely understand why that's such an important piece. And then maybe down the line, you can start to outsource some of that stuff, but that you have to have the understanding and the knowledge to be able to direct somebody. Otherwise, you kind of are just attaching yourself to somebody else's boat and you don't really know where you're going. It's sort of the blind leading the blind. So I think that's also a piece that I really appreciate too.